says we're recording, so let's hit the ground running. Hi everyone, this is Jaime Alejandro, and I'm joined by my wife. Her name is Maddie. She doesn't want to say her own name, so I'm going to keep saying it for her. And this is Our Kids Asleep. It's a quick podcast about fun stuff. Sorry, we just got attacked by the cats. They came in, they want to be part of the show. And just when we thought that the environment was going to be in a perfect situation for us to be podcasting, it just did not work out because they just take over. The cats just
it's like the second a door is closed, it's like we've offended their ancestors.
That's what they do. So
they have to be up in our business.
Yeah, let's get into this, shall we? Let's begin with one of two documentaries that we saw this week. We're going to be feeling pretty learned. We're going to be doing a lot of exploration of the human condition and the hubris. And we're also going to be talking about The White Lotus, an awesome show on HBO. But let's begin with the first documentary, which is called
LuLaRich.
Tell me your thoughts on this. What's that one about?
So, LuLaRich is a documentary about, both these documentaries can be found on Amazon Prime. LuLaRich is about the founders of the clothing company LuLaRoe. It's mostly leggings, but also like dresses and stuff. And it's about the two people who run that company and just sort of like the meteoric rise or meteoric expansion of that company. You know, it talks a lot about multi-level marketing companies, which is a fancy name for pyramid schemes. Yeah, it was an episodic documentary, so it seems like each episode escalated to the inevitable end. But it was interesting to see, because I thought the documentarians did a good job of presenting both sides, because this was a rare occasion where the quote unquote offenders were actually
the company itself.
Yeah, they were actually part of the documentary itself. They actually interviewed what were their names? Mark and Deanne, I think, or
Mark and Deanne, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look it up while you keep going.
So they're the CEO, you know, they're the founders of the company. And so they actually interviewed them. So you kind of got how they started the company and, you know, and then eventually how it sort of expanded out to become this like sort of behemoth that it is today.
And their names are Mark and Deanne Stidham.
Okay. Yeah, it was a very strange series. And I think...
What is that?
It's a weird thing because not only is it a pyramid scheme, it also was a little culty, which I think is an interesting combination. And maybe that's more common amongst those types of companies because you kind of have to instill this like belief system into the people who are below you. And I think LuLaRoe was like really expert in doing that.
Yeah, and I think if you look at all hierarchies, I mean, there has to be that belief. The ones at the top are really, really good at building the identity of the company and propagating the belief of something that is more important than it actually is. And in the case of LuLaRoe, watching those guys unfold, like, say at the beginning with Deanne, I mean, she, as the main leader of this thing, the person who was able to really showcase the spirit of LuLaRoe, that person was like a full saleswoman. Like that woman could probably sell you anything. You could tell just from the way that she talked, the way that she approached things.
Yeah.
And Mark seemed to be the more like business-based, business-oriented kind of person. So together, they really created something that was a reflection of their values too. And I did think it was a good documentary because it showed both of the sides of the story. I mean, having the CEOs and the main people of that company tell their side of it is usually something that never happens. But I also feel that these folks don't feel that they've done anything wrong.
Yeah, that was kind of a theme.
Yeah.
Throughout the documentary was personal responsibility versus
You guys sold me
corporate accountability. It's kind of what it seemed like. It's like, was it what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first? Your sense of personal responsibility of getting into a situation you shouldn't have, or, a corporation or a company taking advantage of the situation that people found themselves in.
Yeah. And to kind of paint the other side a little bit better too, they were marketing to stay-at-home moms and people who were not as well off as, the traditional like middle class person. Wouldn't you say? Like these seem like sometimes middle to lower class folks.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that, and I got a little taste of this because I was on Facebook in that time period. It was like 2013 to about now, or a couple years ago, I guess. And LuLaRich, if you were a female between the ages of like 16 and 40 on Facebook in the last like 8 years, you saw LuLaRich groups. You were invited to them. You were added to them. You looked at the leggings. I guarantee it, you did. Whether you liked them or not, or bought them or not. I have a few pairs, but I wasn't like obsessed. I was just like, oh, these are kind of fun and cute and whatever.
Yeah.
But I did find it curious that and I found it curious that it was just like regular people selling this stuff, and I kind of got wise, and I was like, oh, this is like, I compared it to Herbalife, or whatever.
Similar.
It's similar. And so I was like, oh, it's one of those things. And, clearly it's aimed at women who want to, bring in money, but stay home with their kids. And that's exactly the whole point. I mean, the whole like philosophy of the company is like family first and blah, blah, blah. And, I think it's very appealing in a culture that does not value the work that women do. So, stay-at-home moms who are home with small children all day and maybe feel like they're not contributing, or at least not financially, this is a chance for them to feel empowered. That was a word that they threw around a lot.
Sure.
And I think that is, on the surface, it seems kind of noble, but the more I watched that documentary, like the more exploitative it felt. I mean, it's just exploiting the most desperate,
Well, you know what it was? It seemed to me like this comes from the Mormon religion, which is the religion of the owners, and they have a certain set of values that really advocate for moms who stay at home but are also resilient and do more than they have to in a way. And I think that what was originally founded by their values, by their religious approach, was something that caught on and became the brand. You know what I'm saying? Like, eventually that became their whole model, but it is founded in that belief system of like, women can do more and can do everything. And I think that these people are essentially working themselves into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice idea, but the reality of it, the execution of it was not that.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. It was like this very sort of two-faced idea, I think, and I think it was very appealing to a lot of women. And then, they got really deep and realized like, oh my God, like this is not.
Yeah. And I think maybe I'm giving them too much credit, the business owners, because they put on a good face for the documentary. But I almost think that because of their faith, because of their values, they do espouse a lot of that personal responsibility kind of what do you call it, like ethos, and they expect everyone to hold themselves to the same standard. But I also think that it is disingenuous because the product itself in the system that these women were working in under LuLaRich and those products made it impossible for them to make the amount of money that the ones at the top did.
Right.
Even if they worked their tail off, there was just no way that they were going to be able to make what,
right.
What they were expected to sell or what they believed they would one day make. So they started making all kinds of sacrifices that were eventually not going to make a difference in their business.
Yeah, and I also think the whole personal responsibility thing it's a crock of shit, really, because they were like, we never asked you to get into debt to join LuLaRich. It's like, well, you did.
Yeah,
and there's literally how-tos.
There was documentation provided by them.
Yeah, like how to finance your buy-in, because it was $5,000 to $10,000 to purchase the clothes you would be selling, like the startup. And I mean, who has $5,000 to $10,000 laying around, especially when you're,
a single mother,
single mother, lower middle class.
Yeah.
People don't have that kind of money, and encouraged to take on debt to get in. You were also encouraged to take on debt in order to continue to sell.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. You had to sustain and maintain not only the image of a successful LuLaRich business person, but you also had to buy the product, constantly get it out there, and you also had the duties of what do you call it, like doing outreach for the company, essentially, and recruiting.
Yeah.
Well,
and then they broke down like the actual math that you made hardly any money actually selling the clothing, but you made money by, bringing people on and getting those bonus checks, which added up very quickly if you were good at what you did.
Yeah, and if you watch the documentary, you get a real sense of how the system was just set up to ruin these people, especially the ones at the bottom. And it's kind of demoralizing because you have these stories of women who thought this could be a way out, that they really believe that they could make a new life for themselves, like their family. And ultimately, some folks just end up in the worst possible situation. There's cost that you pay with your relationships, financially. It just seemed like a very toxic downfall.
Yeah, and I think mathematically the scientists that they interviewed said 80% of the people who are in this company are not making anything. 80%.
They're just getting by.
Yeah, they're just like that lowest level of the pyramid, And I also think that there was sort of like that tipping point of when they started bringing the lawsuits against the company because they were being sent, leggings that were moldy and wet, and then the quality of the product started going down the drain because they were they were trying to save money, and they had they had a falling out with their manufacturer, so they had to get a new manufacturer. So the leggings were tearing, and so there's all these quality issues.
Yeah,
and the company had that 100% buyback guarantee that they said was never going to go away, and then all of a sudden it went away, and all these women were stuck with thousands of dollars of merchandise they couldn't sell. And it's just, so people started to get wise. They started to try to get out, and a lot of those women in that documentary are financially ruined.
Yeah, for life. I mean,
their relationships are ruined, their finances are ruined. They had to sell their homes, they had to sell their cars, they had to some of them declared bankruptcy. It's really bad.
And that really also brings me to the other point of this whole thing, which was the accelerated and out of control growth of the company, where you had this group of people, essentially a family, running this business of LuLaRich, and the staff was just kind of up on these makeshift kind of structures trying to prop the company up while it was just escalating. And they did say that it eventually became $1 billion company
in like 5 years.
in 5 years, which is absurd.
Yeah.
Like that never happens.
No.
And the way that they hit that perfect storm of the leggings trend of Instagram, Facebook live streaming, it was just a really interesting social experiment in a way of what was working at that time in 2013 to 2015, that sort of time period. But the biggest mistake, I still think, was this company, or at least the husband and wife, leaving it to their family to run this company, as it was just spiraling out of control.
Yeah, and that
it just doesn't make sense to me.
That was a really interesting thing, because they did that kind of early on. They had like a family meeting, and they were like, okay, this is what our company needs. And we want to extend this invitation to our family first. Because, they're a Mormon family, so there's a lot of them. And then like they had children from previous marriage. So there's a lot of people in this family. And so they were essentially just like doling out jobs to people in their family. And the whole time they were talking about that, I was like, yeah, but are these people actually qualified to do the positions they're being? Because it's one thing to like have your photographer daughter take the pictures of leggings, but it's another thing to have your dumb shit son running the accounting department. Like, what? I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea.
One of the kids was the head of training and development or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, this person clearly has never done anything like this.
Yeah, they were like using Google Sheets to keep track of their
purchases.
Like what they were selling. It's
that
crazy.
Gave me a panic attack.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, imagine an entire company running off of a Google document.
Like all using the same thing, and like, oh my God.
Those
people are insane. And it's just like, yeah, that was crazy. It gave me anxiety, like just seeing and just the level of growth that company experienced, and also just the greed. Like I work for a small company too, but my company is smart enough to know not to grow beyond what we can handle.
Yeah.
And this company was probably about the same size as my company, but they just exploded, and just like the sheer level of greed that propels that forward. Because they very easily could have said, whoa, like,
let's slow down.
We need to slow this down. We need to grow gradually. This can't be sustained. But they didn't. They just kept going. They kept just, buying their fucking Mercedes. And I mean, it all comes down to that. It comes down to, if these people had been smart and not just driven by greed, this company probably would have been sustainable. And they probably wouldn't have wrecked so many people's lives. Yeah,
and I'm thinking a whole theme of this episode is probably going to be about greed, because there is a through line of just complete excess.
True. I didn't think about that.
I didn't connect the dots until you mentioned it, but it's going to be a lot of this talk.
Well, it's a good documentary, and I thought it was not. I didn't feel it was one-sided, which a lot of documentaries that are kind of exposés can feel one-sided. So,
And I do feel like, and this is the great thing about it, that by seeing both of these perspectives, you actually understand that when people are in a desperate situation, especially lower to middle class, working day-to-day families, they will believe in anything if they feel that it might get them out of where they're at. That is the goddamn reality of this whole thing. The people in LuLaRich situations, I mean, those are couples that were just like in our situation, in many of the couples that we know who are, just kind of regular working people who would like to have a little extra money coming in to pay the bills, to help in whatever capacity. But you almost can imagine these people knowing when they sign on the dotted line, when they
on the line
that is dotted, when they get their $5,000 product and they know they have that money to pay back, they have this feeling like this is going to change my life.
Yeah.
But then there's that other feeling like, I'm so fucked. What have I done? This is
Yeah.
like the worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But you want to believe. You desperately want to believe. And so you refuse to see the bad things about what you signed up for.
Well, they don't let you see the bad things. All you see are the success stories.
You don't think that, I don't know. I just still think that like whenever you're taking that leap, there's a degree of realism.
Yeah, of course.
That has to set in at some point that you're almost negating. But it's not like these people were dumb, and they didn't see anything coming.
But you know what? I think that is capitalism, though. Capitalism makes you believe
it's possibility
that you are the exception. You are the exceptional one.
Damn.
Like, yeah, those people are failed, but I'm the exceptional one. I'm the one that's going to turn this $5,000 into $10,000 into $100,000. That's what keeps people doing it, And I also think it's just like that level of, it's that like dangling carrot of hope. That this sort of, and this, I don't mean to sound conspiratorial, but it's like that the elite ruling class dangles to the lower middle class to keep them where they are.
Say, here, you can keep going on the treadmill just a little bit longer.
Yeah, you're going to make me fucking rich, but I'm going to make you think that I'm going to make you rich. But it's really going to be the other way around.
It's the gospel of the haves and soon to haves.
Yeah, yeah. And we talked about that a little bit too afterwards, was that prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
And how they're Mormon, but it's all kind of wrapped up in the same idea, that God loves you and God wants you to be rich. And he wants you to do whatever it takes. So you take out that $5,000 loan. You borrow
it feels
that
more justified.
Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, that's what it is, and you do that for your family, so
Taking
you can stay
leap.
home with your kids.
Yeah.
This is empowering you.
And that was a crazy thing. And now we're getting into really interesting territory where at some point in the documentary, once they saw that these primarily women who were running these businesses were getting it up and running, there was almost a mandate from the company that said, you need to let your husband take over the business so that you can go back to being a mother. Like that was just an interesting idea where they actually said this really disgusting phrase, which was retire your husband.
Yeah.
Like,
because the whole goal was though that your husband no longer had to work outside the home. That you both, that's so fucked up. I just remember that you're both all in. So you are both, as a couple, dependent on that company. Because your husband's no longer working outside the home, doing whatever it is he was doing. So now you're both all in.
Yeah, that's pretty nefarious stuff right there.
And then all the sexist stuff aside, I mean, that's pretty fucked up, Yeah, man, I don't know. They're still going.
They're still
but they're still litigating.
Oh, I bet there were a crap ton of lawsuits against
I think
them.
they settled that big one for like $5 million or nearly $5 million.
The Washington one.
Against
there
the
was
state
one
of
in
Washington
State. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was interesting, and
an interesting look at capitalism and what we want to shoot for.
Yeah, man, it's the American dream.
Flying too close to the sun, like a certain Icarus. But I highly recommend that documentary. I think it was wonderful, and I think we should think to it. Let's go for it.
Oh, you're too far away.
Oh, come on. Wait. Bam.
Oh, Oscar.
Perfect thinking. We are joined by our cat, Oscar, who is the, I didn't plug in the third mic, but maybe I will next time, so we can get those cute purrs and the meows. He's very tired. He just ate.
Yeah.
And he was looking for tuna all day. You could smell it. But let's talk about the HBO series, White Lotus, which kind of went under the radar for us. It was a big deal all summer. People were raving about this. And eventually, Maddie and I were like, let's sit down and watch this thing. And we watched it in 2 sittings.
2 or 3.
2 or 3 sittings. The last one was pretty intense because we watched
like 4
episodes in one night.
An hour-long episode.
We went to bed at 2:30 in the morning. I mean,
it was bad.
For Maddie, that's like staying up for 3 days.
Yeah, I might as well have just stayed up all night. Yeah, that's how I felt the next day.
And I think it was worth it.
It was. I
really do.
It's only 6 episodes, but each episode's like an hour long. So it's, like watching a movie each time you start an episode.
Yeah. Yeah. First reactions. Or let's begin with what it's about. Just a basic premise. Very, very basic.
The premise is it's the White Lotus is a resort in Hawaii. And it follows the characters who come to the resort for a vacation. There's a family that comes, and then there's a honeymooning couple, and then there's a woman who comes by herself to spread her mother's ashes in the ocean.
And hilarity.
And then, obviously,
hijinks ensue.
Yeah, the employees of the actual resort are also a lot of the characters.
What a great display of... just class divide. I thought it was really well done, well handled. Of course, I empathize with the workers in that situation, the people who are running the place, and I could not stand these fucking rich people the moment they got in there. The first episode, halfway through the episode, the first one, I was like, oh, these people are horrible. Yeah. They are the worst.
Yeah, and I think I think it also it highlights sort of the service industry.
Oh, Lord.
Just the fucking shit those poor people deal with on a day-to-day basis. In service and hospitality. And especially obviously the people the housekeepers and the sort of people that are lower on the totem pole deal with a lot of shit. But I feel the people at the top, the management, working management who don't have a lot of power, but they're
the last line of the fence before things have to take a turn financially.
Yeah. And so I felt those strained smiles and the cursing behind the scenes. And I was like, God, I've done all of that. You just, the feeling, that those people have every day.
Ever been in the service industry, and I've been in restaurants, I've been in kitchens, I've been, all over the place in retail. That shit is painful after a while, but it's a great skill.
But I
just
think
throwing it out there
at that level, though, because there is a very upscale resort, it's very swanky, and so the level of people you're dealing with, it's a whole other plane of entitlement,
mm-hmm.
and that's tough, and so it deals we said with
it felt like class divide.
Class warfare, even in some ways.
Yeah. So, some of the main driving forces of this are the guy from The Office. I can't remember what his name was. Jake Lacey, who plays a wonderful asshole.
He's very good.
He was very nice in The Office, but he can give us another side of performance, and that was really well done. But he's insufferable as this Ivy League man-child character who has had everything handed to him, and the moment something goes wrong during his honeymoon, it just escalates and he can't let things go. And the girl from San Andreas plays his wife. Alexandra Daddario. Yeah. And, she seems like the more working class person.
Yeah, I mean, she's essentially poor. She's,
Yeah.
He pretty much says as much.
And let me backtrack a little bit. The cast is outstanding in this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very happy to see 2 people in here, 3 people. Okay, I'm just going to give 3 quick shout outs. Molly Shannon, it's great to see her doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Zahn, who is the fucking best.
Yeah,
and the guy who plays Armand.
Yeah,
or is that his name?
Yeah, Armand.
What a great fucking actor that guy is.
He was so good. Yeah, yeah. They were all. And Jennifer Coolidge plays the single lady that comes to spread her mother's ashes. Word. Yeah, the cast is really just spot on. And another character I think we need to shout out is the music.
Oh my God.
Like the music in the show.
Oh my word.
Like even just like the opening credit music is so disconcerting. But also like it fits so perfectly with like the theme of it and like the feel of it.
Yeah. I have not heard music that imposing in a long time.
Yeah.
It's so rich, and there is a sense of like the world that they're in, you know, in you know, not to say that it appropriates, you know, musical culture of Hawaii, but there is that kind of feel for it, but it's still its own thing. It's still this driving dark thing that's just always building, and throughout most of the scenes it recedes for a little bit, it goes away, but when you're least expecting it, it's just in your face and really elevating things, and it's pretty sick. It's pretty awesome.
Well, and you told me like the composer is like he's like a really renowned composer in Europe.
Yeah, I don't know if he has done very much, but I'll look it up because this is big. I was reading on Reddit about him, and people were talking about how in his previous work that he did, like he played the percussion with like a human bone. Like he just thinks in terms of context, approach, and there's really weird methods that I mean, he seems like a very interesting dude, but for the right reasons. Like he's throwing everything into the work, which is pretty cool. But I'm going to look up the name of the person.
Like watching this show is really it's very tense, but you can't really always put your finger on why. And I think a lot of it is like domestic tension, you know, like and there's these scenes where, you know, obviously, so there's like the family tension of, you know, between the family members and the vacationing family, and then there's the marital tension between the honeymooning couple, and then there's the single woman who's just like, she's completely out of her mind and just has these moments where you're like, you're not sure where she's gonna go next or like what she's gonna do.
Very erratic.
And the way she treats that poor
spa
manager woman is just,
it's pretty heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, and like the whole time you just want to like yell at her, like, don't trust this person. Like she's, you know, and you can tell that like she knows better. And she knows better.
And
but she still can't help herself but like feeling optimistic.
Babe, but that's what I'm talking about with the LuLaRich thing. It's that exact feeling where the slightest opportunity shows up for somebody in that situation. You're like, I got to get out of here. I'm going to pounce on this thing. Yeah. And, you know, heaven or hell be damned. I'm just going to see it through to the end. And then there's always something that reminds you at the end of it. You're like, fuck, where did I do this?
Yeah.
Why did I sign up for this?
Yeah.
It's very, very heartbreaking. But I also think there's got to be, we really have to signal the way that the stories were woven together. Well done for Mike White, the way that he put this together. The stories are engaging, but there's that almost like a whodunit kind of feeling throughout the whole thing. Because at the beginning, you know that shit's going to go down. They've kind of set it up that way, but you don't know how. So you almost know what happened, but you don't know how they got there. And so I think that's kind of the general, you know, propulsion of the thing.
You think you know
what
happened, but yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that like, and this is a weird thing. Like, the episodes didn't feel too heavy to me.
Yeah.
Like, there was humor
they
in there.
countered it with like enough humor to make it not feel depressing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like
well, even if it was just like the absurdity of the situation that was funny.
Yeah, I was thinking of Jennifer Coolidge crying because she couldn't scatter her mom's ashes.
Yeah.
She's the most obnoxious wail.
Yeah.
It was so amazing.
Yeah. It's a very interesting show.
Yeah. I do think that Armand is...
That actor he was incredible.
Jesus,
he was incredible.
Yeah, he's Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to look...
I also thought the through line of tension between... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention real quick. The composer was a gentleman named Cristobal Tapia de Vir, who is a Chilean-born film and television composer.
Mm.
Oh, he did the soundtrack for Channel 4's National Treasure, which earned him a BAFTA in 2017. He's kind of a boss. He's done really awesome stuff. Somebody mentioned another show that I will get back to later, but I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, I was just going to say they touch a little bit on there's the friend of the daughter of the family that's vacationing. She like brought a friend with her. And she starts kind of seeing one of the boys, like one of the guys that works at the hotel.
Oh, and I'm sorry, there's spoilers. Like, are we?
Well, I'm not gonna spoil too much. I'm not gonna go into the details of the situation, but I thought it was interesting that they brought up for that character, that guy that works for the hotel, that his family, you know, like this island was like their ancestral land, and the hotel sort of encroached on, pretty much like bought the land out from under them, and he was sort of looked down on by his family for going to work there. And he said, well, there's nowhere else to work. Mm-hmm. How am I supposed to make money?
Yeah.
And so that idea that like there's this underlying tension that's so much bigger than all of these people's trivial problems. And also just that this girl, who's this entitled rich girl, that just doesn't get it. She thinks she gets it.
It's the idea of this kind of, it's idealism that doesn't have practical application.
Yeah.
That is so removed and it's so theoretical that you can't really put it to use anywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's an important discussion to have right now, because in this day and age, we get in our heads a lot and we deal in theory a lot. And it's time to kind of consider how we can make things more practical. How can things have more application in the real world? And that's the biggest one of them all, especially in activism, quote unquote. I mean, that's what has to happen.
And without giving a lot away, the context of what you're talking about is essentially like this girl thinking she understands the problems that this guy is having, and that she thinks she has a way to simultaneously get him what he needs and also get back at these white people. And with just absolutely zero regard for any real life repercussions that could come back on them. And the way they handle that in the end is it's so perfect, because it's exactly what would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of activism with no context,
no end product either.
Yeah, with just no idea how the real world works, because you don't live in the real world, and you've never had to.
Mm-hmm.
It's
powerful.
It is, and
it's challenging too, because it's not something that we're willing to accept.
Yeah,
a majority of us.
Well, it made me think of that Tim Dillon railing against that reality show for activists.
Yeah, I mean that's another long-winded conversation, but that That's the truth, man. Like people in positions of power in elite circles don't really understand the difficulties of implementing a lot of these ideas, but that's kind of how it works. The world that is seen above the clouds is a lot different than what's down here, and so practical application is not what's on the upper levels.
Yeah.
Very good show.
Yeah, it was. And if you can handle the tension,
Yeah,
it's worth it. The payoff is worth it.
it's a phenomenal score.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I usually, you skip through the intro, and I never skipped the intro.
Yeah,
Like, it's just so good.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommended. Let's do another tink. It's a night of uplift, a night of tinks. Last and not least, let's move on to the last documentary of the night. Tell us a little bit about it.
Also found on Prime. It's called Generation Wealth. It was made by Lauren Greenfield. Laura or Lauren? Lauren Greenfield. She's a documentarian, an American film photographer,
artist,
writer.
She's done quite a few documentaries.
Yeah.
So this documentary, Generation Wealth, pretty brand new. It came out this year, didn't it?
No, I think it's 2018.
Okay. Well, tell us who it follows and how it goes about its thing.
It's essentially just about this woman. She chronicles wealth in America through photography. And she's been doing that for like 20 years or something. And the culmination of the documentary is a museum exhibit she's been working on, compiling from all her photos. And she follows like a few key characters or subjects of her photos, and she follows up with them years later. And essentially just like chronicling like excess and greed and the impact that it has on people, and particularly on young people living in Los Angeles. And the pressure to be thinner, richer, to have the best of everything, and like how damaging that is, and how it's just a product of what we've created, in our society.
Yeah, especially in our modern American culture of consumption and more. It is destroying people left and right. And this is the kind of documentary, very traditional in the sense that it really lures you, it grabs you by the obscene wealth, the thrill ride of watching these people live these extreme lives, and then it knocks you over the head with the consequence at the end. And I was so bummed out at the end. I really just wanted it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
It kept going for a couple more minutes, but I was just so depressed.
Yeah,
it took a lot.
Yeah.
Because you have these, again, the disparity of opportunity, but with the same messaging across all classes of wealth and no wealth. So everyone is looking at this. Everyone is looking at fucking the Kardashians going to town and all of these rich people just living on a fucking cloud. And the desperation of those below, the inability to get to those points pushes these people who have no real sense of limitation, or not limitation, but I almost want to say self-control, or as an act of desperation, they choose to go all in, and then they pay it so bad. Like, there was a case that really broke my heart of that woman who, she had a lot of self-esteem issues. She was a single mother, and she decided to go get plastic surgery in Brazil. Still a very expensive procedure. She got a lot of work done, But when she got back, she was like buried in debt because of it. And at that point, you're like, to what end? How is this making anything better in your situation? But it comes down to that same idea. And I'm sorry if I keep reiterating it. It's that you see something that's right in front of you that is going to make your life just a little bit better, potentially. Not even a full guarantee that it's going to make your life better. And I bet you that people in lower economic situations will go for that 100% of the time, denying what might be in front of them as something that's, might not be the salvation. But that really did break my heart. Like, I don't want to give too much away, but that's one of the many that just kind of spiraled out of control.
Yeah. I thought the German guy was really interesting.
Oh yeah, that dude is.
He was like a former hedge fund manager that was like exiled to Germany or something. He was like on the FBI's most wanted list for white collar crime. His I don't know, like that scene where he, he's like, I was sitting on a yacht with my wife having dinner, and he's like, I could have bought anything, any boat, any plane. I literally could have bought anything in that moment. And, he said we were sitting amongst all these multi-million-dollar yachts, and he asked his wife, like, which one of these do you want me to buy? Do you want that one or that one and that one? And she just said, I just want you to turn off your phone. I just want to have dinner with you with your phone off.
Jesus.
And he just started like weeping because his whole, like, everything he had worked toward, it just didn't matter. Yeah, I don't know. His story was interesting.
Yeah, there were quite a few of those. I thought it was kind of cool that she kind of stayed in touch with some of her high school like peers, and they had an expectation of what wealth was supposed to look like and what they were going to do when they were older. And then she kind of went back and she talked with them, hung out with a couple of them, and especially for them growing up in the kind of high school they did in California, where there is an expectation of not just wealth, but fame. It's so messy.
Yeah.
So messy for kids. I don't know. What are your takeaways on that? Especially like that pursuit of fame, that desperate chase to just be known, to be in the limelight. Because I think that was the kind of like the difference between the other documentaries and this one. This one was more, it focused on being perfect and being known. And I think there was that other component in this documentary.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really depressing. And I think, I thought the scene where her younger son was like, she
asked him, right?
No, he wrote that essay about legacy and like how much pressure he felt to be perfect. Not self-imposed maybe, but like his brother had gotten a perfect ACT score, and both his parents went to Harvard, and his grandparents went to Harvard, and it's just like, even for people who are privileged, they are clearly privileged, feel this incredible pressure to live up to something,
yeah.
And even for someone like her who is incredible, obviously she's been working on this her whole life, like she's very aware of what those things can do to children, and yet she's still not immune. They're still not immune to it.
Still happening at home.
Yeah, there's still like that that pressure. Even if it's a little bit different kind of pressure, but it's, something that the kids are still feeling.
And that was very nicely done too, because in the beginning, it is very much about the subjects that she's following, quite a variety of them. Interesting scope of the number of people that were being followed in the documentary, but ultimately it becomes about her lens, like why she's seeing things this way and the impact that her work has had on our family, which I thought was kind of a very sad point too, where this woman sacrificed a lot for something that, may or may not matter, something that, I guess on a smaller scale, like I as an artist ask myself every day, like, why can't I just hang out with my family instead of chasing, like 2 or 3 hours of writing at, 1 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think she got something good out of it. And I think her kids realize that she's, that's the only way she can operate. But there's still a price that was paid, and she missed out on a lot of things. Like she left the baby, her firstborn, at 10 weeks to go to China.
Right.
That was intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think her relationship with her mother was also like when she has that sort of realization that her kids think she's a workaholic. And she has that same conversation with her mom. Who was like they got divorced and her mom just left. Like her mom went to some other city, and she could only see her so often.
Yeah.
And she felt like abandoned by her mom. And I think kind of realizing that to some extent she did not exactly the same thing to her kids. It wasn't that bad with her kids, but that she is perceived in a similar way by her own children to, really be dedicated to her work to maybe an unhealthy level in some ways. That seemed to be kind of devastating to her.
And that's a curious thing how that kind of repeats, unless you have a clear sense of like, I refuse to be like my parents, right? I have to divorce myself from this part of me that I got from my parents. But I think in her case, things ended pretty well, though. Her family still loves her.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, they're still her family, and her kids still love her, and she still has a relationship with her mom, even though it's not perfect. And
and hey, you got to give props to her husband, who seemed to be a boss too.
Yeah,
he's just like, you need to go to China, and your baby's 10 weeks old.
Yeah,
go do you. I mean, that's a husband.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to go up to China for a little while, I'd say, well, think about it. But I can't stop you.
Yeah.
You're gonna do what you want to do, and we'll support you. But that's pretty admirable. It's pretty cool to see. Overall, though, the documentary just sheds a lot of light on what our values are as a society right now. What do we really care about?
Spoiler alert, it ain't good.
Jesus, what a downer episode. No, this has been very, very cool because we actually have a running theme tonight, which I'm funny. Kind of psyched about.
We didn't even intend that.
But yeah, watch Generation Wealth. It's an interesting, well-made documentary, and definitely worth your time.
Yeah.
Maybe have a drink, or something while you watch it so you don't get too depressed.
Yeah.
Let's think to that one. We'll think ahead. A wonderful night. 3 tanks. Anything else you want to add? Because I think this was
it was good.
It was a good lineup.
Oh, I wanted to shout Sam out. She emailed us.
All right.
At ourkidsasleep, and you can email us too, ourkidsasleep@gmail.com. But she emailed me with a GIF from Arrested Development that she reminded me that it was hop-ons, not tag-alongs or whatever I said in the episode about the old ladies on the trolley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was like, the word you were looking for was hop-ons. Thanks to Michael.
Thank you, Sam.
Michael Bluth. Yeah. Yeah, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And,
help us out. Tell your friends.
Yeah.
We give good reviews.
We'll try to actually release some on time in the next
we're
few
going to
weeks.
be rocking and rolling here on out. This is our mid-year resolution. We're going to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to leave you be. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening to us, and we hope to talk to you real soon.
Good night, guys.
Bye.